something is gonna have to change. Now, I love making YouTube videos, but at the minute, it takes me so long to do it. Because first I'm recording all the footage when I'm making my 3D characters, and then I'm going through all that footage, writing down everything that I did when I did it. Then I'm recording that script that comes out of that. Then I'm editing me talking to the camera, and then I'm going through all of the footage and I'm using less than 1% of, I don't know, 15, 20, 25, 30 hours of footage that I need to go through just to use a tiny little bit of it and sync it up with me talking to the camera. It's too much. So I have decided that I'm gonna try something a little bit different. Something that will hopefully lighten this load, and essentially, I don't actually know what I'm gonna do yet. But this is fine. I see it all the time where people don't try new things because they're so worried that they're gonna make a mistake. Or even worse, they just get stuck in the planning phase and never actually doing something because, again, they just don't wanna make a mistake. But you need to make these mistakes in order to get better. You know, like at the start of this video when the microphone dropped and I accidentally turned it off and it's not been on this whole time. Fortunately, I've got a backup one on the top of the camera. So yeah, the quality of these videos might go down a little bit. I'm not sure, we'll just have to wait and see. But hopefully it will make editing them easier for me, and then maybe we'll get a few more right as well. And the fact that I will be able to post more should mean that it should improve a little bit quicker too. Now, having said that, I have actually already recorded and edited a load of footage from the character that I'm currently working on for my Danny Mac 3D challenge that I'm hosting over on Patreon. Check out the link in the description below. You don't have to pay to get involved, so it's worthwhile going having a look if you're interested in that. Now, the theme this month is Angels and Demons, and I've already done 3.5 weeks worth. Very much running out of time. Only got like 3-4 days left to finish it, and I'm really far behind. But I have already recorded and edited this footage, and I don't want to just let it go to waste. So for the rest of this video, it is going to be the same style of edited video that you've seen me do time and time again. However, starting from the next video, it's going to be a little bit different, and perhaps you can sense a little bit of difference in how the intro to this video has been put together. But as I said, I don't know where I'm going with it. We'll just see how it goes. However, for now, enjoy how I'm putting together this character. As I said, the theme is Angels and Demons, and I'll just give you a little bit of background on my thinking behind the design of this character. So at first I was thinking maybe I'll have an angel and a demon, so literally angels and demons interacting in some way, maybe some sort of love story or something like that. But then I thought, you know what, 2 characters, that is a hell of a lot of work for 1 month. So instead I went with the idea of, okay, so this is going to sound a little bit funny at first, but I have recently got back into meditation. Now, don't turn off. I know a lot of people think meditation is just some sort of relaxation tool at best, and a little bit woo-woo at worst. It's so much more than that. Meditation is about better understanding how your mind works. It's about sitting down with your neurotic thoughts and emotions and accepting them for what they are and making peace with them instead of running away from them. Or another way to put it, meditation is a tool for confronting your inner demons. Okay, so that's how I've got that. I'm kind of using this challenge to communicate that meditation is a tool to quieten your neurotic demon qualities and nurture your more peaceful angelic qualities, if you like. Now, if you'd like to learn more about meditation, because, you know, this isn't really the video for that, then I will drop a link in the description to one of my favourite talks on the matter. Even if you're not interested, just watch the first 10 minutes and see what you think, because I find it absolutely fascinating. And now I'm going to stop preaching at you and we can get on with the sculpting portion of this video. It's officially spring in the UK. I started the character like I normally do by building up a mannequin. And by mannequin, I essentially mean a bunch of simple shapes to represent the human body. Kind of like the little mannequins that you see at art shops that you use to help you visualize different poses. You know, the point here is to keep everything super simple so that the shapes and proportions can be moved around without worrying about buggering anything up. Now, often when I sculpt characters, I'll sculpt them in an A pose, and the benefit of doing this is that I can make use of symmetry and hopefully save myself a bit of time. However, since I know that this piece is going to be largely symmetrical anyway, I decided to create the mannequin in pose for a change. Now, I don't usually create characters this way, and I was a little bit concerned that I might get the proportions a little bit off, so as a safety measure, I also created some shapes to represent the character standing up. This way I can always fall back on these shapes if I ever get lost. The next step is to slowly start merging these shapes together and progressing the anatomy. I don't merge all the shapes at the same time though. I do it bit by bit as the sculpt progresses. For now I'm just concerning myself with the upper and lower torso because I know that this will look largely the same whether the character is stood up or sat down anyway. Now if you'd like to know more about sculpting the torso, I taught this in episode 2 of my running series on how to sculpt a stylized character on Patreon. Don't worry if you missed the episode, all Patreon reward packages are also available on my Gumroad store as well, which you'll again find linked below. Now I started to create a basic shape for the wings using a low poly plane from the front view. I then added some beveled curves for the horns. Now I'm really just thinking about the silhouette here, and I'm aware that it looks a bit naff. We'll come back to this later. Now at this point in the sculpt, I decided to take a break and come back at it tomorrow with fresh eyes. The next day I started making some adjustments. Now I would always recommend taking as many breaks from your work as you can, even if it's just 5 minutes. Coming back to your sculpt with fresh eyes almost always reveals some problems or ideas that you might not have spotted when you left it. I then revert back to my pose mannequin and start finding the pose a bit better. Right now the legs are intersecting each other, but that's okay. I can add asymmetry a little bit later. And pretty soon I get started on probably my favourite part of any sculpt, the head. And I want to create some simple ear shapes first because it makes finding the proportions easier. Or rather, without them, it's hard to gauge where to put the other features of the face. Next, I start making marks to indicate certain facial features. Notice that I'm not making any drastic movement here. I'm slowly moving towards the shapes at a low resolution. A nice way to think about this approach is imagine your character is walking towards you from a distance. When they're really far away, you can just about make out a vague outline. And then as they start to walk closer to you, you start making out a face and maybe what clothes they're wearing. And then once they're right up close, you can see their individual facial features and the writing on the shirt, for example. This is the approach you want to take. Start off really vague and then add more and more details as you progress. Now, in case you weren't aware, I do have a course on how to sculpt a stylized head where I guide you step by step through the process of creating the character you can see on the screen now. So if this looks interesting, make sure you check it out using the link below. In fact, the first lesson is available for free on YouTube, so I'll link that below too. Now, I'm still conscious that the wings don't look very good, so I start building out some spines using curves. Now, I'm using the shape that I created to help guide the curves initially, but the main reason it looks so bad is because it's two-dimensional. It's completely flat, you know, and it only looks right from a front view. So with this in mind, I tweaked the spines from all angles, keeping in mind the rhythms and negative space being created between each spine. You want to try and find a nice flow from any perceivable angle. Next, I moved on to creating the base hairstyle for the character. Now, as with everything else so far, this was created using super simple shapes to find the overall forms. The intention is to come back later on and overlay hair curves to add detail. Next, I got to work on the arms, and the way I approach anatomy is generally to sculpt the muscles and bones first, kinda like an Ecochet model, and then add skin and fat on top. So I'm constructing it from the inside out. This was an interesting challenge for me because I don't usually sculpt the arms in a supinated position, so I had to push out of my comfort zone a bit to understand it. Now, to help with this, sometimes I use a program called Daz, which allows me to pause a pre-made 3D character and use it as reference. Now, the nice thing about doing this is that I can view the reference from any angle. I mainly did this to help me understand the arms, but I do use it to help me understand the legs as well. And by now I decided it's time to pull the legs out of symmetry so that I can pose them properly without them intersecting. I also went ahead and started pulling a hand out of the arm, and this helped me better understand what's going on as well. So the next day, we're on day 3 now, I got to work on the feet, and at the moment I'm just remeshing the shape periodically to avoid stretch geometry. However, I do come back later and model the foot from scratch, because when you're remeshing like this, it's hard to keep the toes separated. You know, every time you remesh it, it just smushes them back together. What I'm doing now isn't a waste of time though, since I can project this onto the modelled foot later. I then push the arm a bit further along, and I think here you can see what I mean about sculpting an Ecochet style model. The underlying muscles are sculpted quite obvious to help me understand what's happening beneath the skin. But the final result will look a bit different because it'll be represented with a layer of fat and skin, and so it'll soften out these forms. Although you don't have to do this, I mean, it could be quite a nice style to leave it like this. In fact, one of my most favourite 3D artists, whose name is Nikita Veprikov, I'll put some images of his work on the screen now because they're absolutely outstanding, and he does kind of leave it in this Ecochet state, and I think just does a really nice job of it. It's really outstanding work. Now the next day I got to work on the fingers, which, just like everything else, started as a super simple shape. I can then duplicate the shape and create the other fingers. Now, I know that I could have saved myself some time by fleshing out the shape first before duplicating it, but at this moment in time I feel like I want some practice sculpting the fingers, so I decide that I'm going to do it 4 times over. Now at the moment I'm thinking that I just want the fingers in a fairly relaxed position, pointing upwards, but I am conscious that I might end up rigging the fingers later to tweak the shape a little bit. And then for the thumb, it was the same situation. I started with a super simple shape and pushed and pulled it into position before merging it with the rest of the hand. Now at this point, I'm feeling like the arm and the hand is getting quite high res, so I move on to retopologizing it to give me a bit more control. Now this was really simple for the arm because it's basically just a cylinder, but it took a little bit longer to retopologize the hand and fingers. It's worth the effort though, because once we have clean topology, it's much easier to find clean shapes. So I continue to work on and improve the hand. About now, I feel like it's time to add a camera to the scene, and what this allows me to do is see how the piece is coming together from a fixed viewpoint, which is essentially the view of the final render. Now while I retopologized the arm and hand from scratch, for the head I imported an existing character that already has good topology. I then separated everything but the head and started wrapping it around my sculpt. Now obviously the eyes in the sculpt are closed, so I closed the eyes on the retopology mesh. This is a lot easier to do if you separate the top eyelid from the bottom eyelid using face sets, because it means that you can then turn on auto masking by face sets and work on them individually. And then I got to work wrapping the rest of the head, and while it might look appealing to do retopology this way, it does come with its own problems, and it actually takes longer than you might think. For instance, when it comes to projecting the good topology onto the sculpt, I need to think about how I'll stop the mouth bag from being projected and making a mess. I do this by adding the vertices that make up the mouth bag to a vertex group, and then I can tell the shrink wrap modifier to ignore this vertex group and avoid messing up the vertices. And then I can also add other problem vertices to this group, such as inside the eyelids. Then once I'm happy, I project the sculpt onto the retopologized mesh before fixing any issues that this process inevitably creates. I can then also add more subdivisions to the head and start sculpting in new details and just progressing it a little bit further. Next, I spent a little bit of time improving the foot, and I'll be honest with you, I do feel like my ability to sculpt feet needs working on as it is. I think it's probably the area that I've put off studying the most. So I'm doing my best here to really take my time to try and figure out the shapes that I'm sculpting. And again, it's a good idea to use face sets to separate out the toes so that you can work on each one individually. After working on the foot, I positioned it on the right leg before working on the leg itself, adding in a bit of anatomy. Now at this point, I'm still not sure how I'm going to approach retopology, but I merged the upper and lower legs so that I could start sculpting at a better transition at the knee. I'm getting pretty excited about how this is looking now. I don't want to remesh the foot into the leg right now because that will mush all the toes together again. And it'll also mean that I also lose the good topology that we already have for the feet. So what I'll probably do is later I'll re-topologize the leg and then bridge the gap from the leg to the foot so that we have all one piece. Rather than sculpt the other leg from scratch, I saved myself a little bit of time by duplicating the right leg, mirroring it over, and then moving it into a similar position to what our mannequin shapes were in. And then I did the same thing for the foot as well. And for the eyelashes, I used retopology tools to draw them directly onto the mesh. I then added a solidify modifier to give it thickness and a subdiv surface to make it smoother. I then repeated this process for the eyebrows too, drawing the topology directly onto the head and then adding thickness and smoothing it out. The following day, I decided it was time to retopologize the torso and the legs. Now looking back, I'm not quite sure why I decided to retopologize the torso from scratch when I could have just wrapped the retopology mesh around it. But you know what, it's fine, it didn't take too long and I guess it was practice. Once the torso was done, I then bridged it to the arm to make it all one piece. A quick retopology on the legs later and I could attach the torso to the legs as well. I am considering attaching the head to the torso as well, but at the moment the difference in resolution is quite a lot, and from the render view you can't really see that they're separate objects anyway. So I'm not sure, we'll just see how we get on with that one. Though I do prefer having everything attached as one piece though, it just makes the work feel more complete, I suppose. And that is where I'm up to. I'm not quite sure how I'm gonna get this thing finished by the end of the week, along with another YouTube video. We're just gonna have to see how we get on with that one. But the next theme will start on the 1st of June, the 1st of next month. So if you wanna get involved, make sure you get over to Patreon. As I say, you don't have to be subscribed to get involved, but if you do subscribe, you will get access to the Discord community, and I also upload new lessons every month on sculpting stylized characters, as well as scene files and project files and reference images and all sorts of things. Just go and have a look and you'll see what I mean. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more content. Look, it's quite sunny now. I think I'm gonna go for a walk. Seems like a good idea. See you in the next one. Peace.